sound of running water. Get this into this big tank, which is absolutely empty, and we can go from there. It's going to be an interesting test, this, because I used this battery for a little bit when I was moving water to and from the water butts, and I haven't charged it since. That was about 3 weeks ago, so I could well put this in and find it's got no charge at all. Just check that the battery is in there, and it's not. Better go and find that. Gotta say, it's extremely convenient and fits onto that rack really nicely. Okay, just need to get a bit of hose on the end of that. Well, I guess you ask, why would I use another hose when I've already got a hose? Well, I'm doing two jobs at once. This is filling and I'm hosing, so it's quite efficient. Awesome. There's so much power on this Bosch pump, it's unbelievable. So everything's going to get a good dousing now. Well, if you have a use for one of these and you're wondering whether they're any good, I gotta say, they do exactly what they indicate on the tin, and it works perfectly. Good times. So I've got to work out how to get to the water butts to see if I can fill them up. So for that I use a slightly different fitting and just join this one hose to the other, and then take a diagonal line up to the water butts. That way I can fill them up and keep me going for a lot longer. So nothing fancy really, just a simple hose to hose fitting. And just run the sleeve down, push it in, tighten it up, and then I'll add this to the hose that's currently in that tank, and that should get me all the way. Here's hoping. Well, it's time to harvest the rhubarb. I'm going to get these flower stems off of these plants because I know they don't do them any good. And to be honest, I think with these plants that have taken a bit of a knock this year, mainly because of the amount of flowers that seem to come up, I'm just going to leave them. I'm going to try and let them get a bit stronger and take out anything I think is a bit of a problem, and actually harvest from these plants which are that much more vigorous and seem to be resistant to this flowering problem. So take a couple more of these awkward bits off. And then I'll get on with the harvesting on the other plants. And if you're wondering why I harvest so much in one go, to be honest, this is one of the best fruits or vegetables, whatever you want to call it. I think it's a fruit that you can freeze. And all you do, or all I do, is take the outer surface off of these stems, cut it up into chunks, and pop it straight into freezer bags and in the freezer in portion sizes that we'll use during the rest of the year. And we're just finishing off using the rhubarb that we grew last year, so the timing's perfect. And these leaves, they can be used to make an insecticide, at least something that gets rid of green fly in my experience, by steeping the leaves in boiling water for as as long as you like really. I think it just gets stronger the longer you leave it. And then you just strain it off into a container and Bob's your uncle. You've got a good insecticide. Right, I'm going to work my way through this and then there'll be quite a bit of work to do in the kitchen. So with each of those plants I've left quite a lot of leaf and quite a lot of stems, and that helps to make sure that the plant remains vigorous. And cropping these, you'll have seen me just pull them, and that's the best technique for taking the rhubarb out of the main plant. And all of them pretty much the same, fair amount of leaf left, and I could well get another crop out of there later on because it does stimulate some more leaf growth in my experience. So there we have it. That's quite a lot of work to do, but also a really nice crop from a plot that actually originally was just taken over to reduce the amount of weed seed blowing over my pot. So I'm quite pleased with how we're making good use of it, and a fair amount of leaves off of that. And if you want to make that rhubarb insecticide, just do a search on YouTube. You'll find there's lots of different recipes and some very, very good instructional videos. I'm finding that these potatoes, even out of the polytunnel, are just a bit too exposed here. They're just not staying damp enough and require a lot more watering. So I'm just going to move them down with all the other potatoes under the shade of the tree, where they seem to do that much better. So, 2 at a time. So these 2 pots of basil, one of them worked out pretty well, the other one not so much. So I'm just going to transfer these little plants from this other one and make one big pot. They should transfer okay, pretty much just like transferring seedlings, and then they can go back in the polytunnel, carry on growing, and then we'll have 2 full pots of basil to pick from. There we go. Well, to be honest, I'm just filling spaces now. The planting is essentially complete, so I'm just going to use this bit of spare space in front of these broad beans. They're not doing brilliantly, but there'll be a few extras. So I think what I'm going to do is put just 6 celeriacs in here, and we'll get the soil broken up because this soil is quite hard underneath. I've given it a number of top dressings over the years with my compost, but it remains quite dense underneath, so just break it up a little bit, and then we can get these 6 celeriac in. And I've got plenty left, and these root trainers have done a fantastic job. There's 4 great plants there, so let's get them in and get them down just so that the crown of the plant sits at the level of the soil, and that'll be perfect. And same with the next one. And you can see the root system on these is just ideal. It basically fills the root trainer, and there's none that have got roots heavily coming out the base. And if they start coming out the base, they've normally been in there a little bit too long. Right, let's get that one firmly in. Looking good. I'll get on and do the other 4. So I'm at that point where these tomatoes are just getting a bit too weighty and they're beginning to fall over. So I've just put a small cable tie around the stem and around this rope, and that should hold it in place. And this tomato is bifurcating. It's broken out into 2 stems, and that stem I'm going to carry on growing, and hopefully it'll get to the point eventually where I can fix it to this one, and then I'll carry on growing it in an upward direction. But that'll give it the support it needs now, and I'll take a look through the others and do the same. So this one's the same. It's just getting a bit too heavy. I have wrapped it around this rope, but I think we're going to secure it, and I'll just do it there where the stem is already crossing the rope, and just very loosely, and that'll give it the support it needs. And this one is a single stem, and it looks like it's going to predominantly grow up this one. And the others, well, at the moment they're very strong, and I think they probably don't need anything just yet. There's plenty of trusses on these. Now this variety, Lata, is really interesting. It's not as leaf dense as any tomato I've ever grown before, but it's absolutely covered in trusses. And this one, we've got, what, 3 tomatoes on it already, and they seem to be just covered. So it's going to be very interesting to watch these. This one's exactly the same. They don't get particularly thick, but they're a very interesting tomato. And looking at the amount of tomatoes that look like are going to come to fruition on here, there's 3 on that one and 1 on there, 2 on there. I think it's going to be a very successful tomato. Very different from these. And this is Roma, and it's a very leaf dense tomato. So interesting times. There's a cracking on now. It really is a load of peppers coming off of this one. This is kakolka. There's a paprika pepper, very sweet, but it's doing really well. And these little tomatoes called House, I potted them up once. They really shot on from that. So I am thinking about potting them on once more, just to get a big bush, and then hopefully lots of tomatoes. And you can see it's absolutely covered in trusses. So I'm going to start feeding these now. The usual approach is wait until you get a couple of trusses and then start feeding them. And these peppers, well, this one's really starting to move on, which is nice to see. The parsnip this morning, thinking can't wait too much longer. Once you get plants this sort of size, the taproot will be probably nearly at the bottom of this container, and that's the one thing you don't want when you're transplanting parsnips, is to damage that taproot at the bottom. So it won't be long before these are going out. I do hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and if you want updates from me each time I upload a video, click the bell and select all. I do hope you have a great day. Diolch yn fawr.